Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brever and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are going to be answering your questions about the NBA playoffs, thrown in a mailbag episode here. And we're going to start with a question from Prod Snowfall, who asks, Logan, does Denver not get the champion respect because we've gone 5 years without a repeat winner, or is the reason deeper? Every opportunity to write them off is taken, whether it's KD and Book or LeBron and AD or this Wolves team, and every Jokic MVP was followed with yeah buts. But why?
I don't really know why. I think the repeat champion is a component in this. The fact that it is really hard to repeat. And, I mean, this is true for both major sports that we cover too, Carson. I mean, until the Chiefs did it this past year, nobody had done it in the NFL either. Like, it's just really hard to do. I think that's a component in it. But I also think I think a part of it is also Nikola Jokic. And I don't know if people don't gravitate towards him because of his personality or his play style. I think people, seek out opportunities to hate on him. And I don't really know why. I think he's super fun to watch. Like, I don't know if they find him boring or what the deal is, but I feel like in most media circles and most people who are really plugged into the game, I feel like they do give Denver their respect and they do give Jokic all the praise. It is strange. Like, I think he's concretely the best player in basketball and has concretely been the best player in basketball for 3+ years running now. Like, I mean, he really ascended last year and took that throne. Like, he did it. I don't know. That one befuddles me. Like, I thought that Denver was concretely the title favorite throughout the regular season. They're still my title favorite at this point. So, I don't know, man. I don't know if it's because the Nuggets are boring. They just don't buy into Jokic and his play style and his personality. But I feel like most basketball media members who are plugged in give Denver and Jokic their due respect.
I do think that the going 5 years without a repeat winner is a factor here. Just the dynamic of getting high on a champion from the previous season who then doesn't nearly replicate their success, which is the trend that we've seen. But I view Denver as the strongest champion since the Warriors last year, and I felt that they were in an exceptional position to replicate and build on their success because they kept almost all their core pieces together. Losing Bruce Brown did hurt, and it made the bench a bit concerning, although the bench has performed well in these playoffs. But that starting five that we knew was one of the absolute best of this century, with the best player on the planet, clearly with a really nice complementary star, with guys who fill their roles at such a high level. Like, I was very confident in that formula being replicated. But I think ultimately a lot of people just chose to die on the wrong hill with Jokic. This is what we saw last year. This man was slandered more than anybody alive just over a year ago when he was en route to winning his third straight MVP, which ended up not happening because the narratives got so out of hands, because people decided to make it about race. People decided to say that the guy didn't play a lick of defense. People decided to say that his only case for basketball greatness was advanced stats and analytics or whatever, which has always been nonsense. And I think it just comes down to the fact that people didn't watch Nikola Jokic for too long, and they have these preset ideas about what a great basketball player looks like. Jokic is probably the most unathletic all-time great basketball player ever. It just doesn't matter because he is so overwhelmingly strong. His touch in the paint is the greatest we've ever seen. He is, to me, a top 3 passer in NBA history, an absolute basketball genius, the most unstoppable offensive player, not just in the game right now, but I would argue ever. And so there's this notion that, NBA fans love high-flying athletes, and NBA fans often think that you have to be an elite two-way player to be one of these all-time great players, which I just don't think is true. I think that you can be so overwhelmingly dominant offensively that you leave every defense without answers, and that's what Jokic has done. Like, we've seen it now even over these last 2 games against the Minnesota defense that is not just the best in the league, but the best in a long time, that gave him more trouble by far than anybody through 2 games. And now he has figured things out, and he has gotten into a rhythm, and he has started to use their own strengths against them, to adjust to their tendencies. He has become impossible to read, manipulating them to get whatever look he wants at will. And that's just what the man has done. He's given you all-time great efficiency. He's given you all-time great impact, like on-off numbers year after year that we haven't seen since peak Kevin Garnett, 20 years. These all-time carry jobs when you think about the 2022 MVP, even 2021. what he's doing with Jamal off the floor for extended stretches of that season. Then the next year, no Jamal Murray and no MPJ, and still the Nuggets played in terms of point differential as an elite basketball team with him on the floor. Like, he's just proven these doubters completely wrong over and over and over again. And the most convincing example was after all that ridiculous MVP discourse last year when he then goes on one of the most dominant title runs that we've seen in a long time. I think legitimately you could argue the best offensive run by an individual player ever. They only drop 4 games in that title run. Like, say what you want about the path, it's not the strongest, but that was convincing stuff. And then now at the first signs of cracks in the armor, at the first signs of adversity, going down 2-0, everybody just decided to make it a retroactive, oh, the Nuggets were never that good. Oh, Jokic has always been a fraud. Not give credit to a Timberwolves defense that was playing incredibly well, a Timberwolves team that is simply excellent and is better than anybody that the Nuggets faced last year. It had to immediately turn to slander, which is just completely misguided and completely wrong. And that's what Jokic continues to prove. And I think the gap continues to grow between him and the rest of the league. Part of that is just availability and health, Logan. Like, over the last 6 years, the guy's missing 4 games per season. That doesn't happen in the 2020s. Nobody is that consistently healthy and available. And Luka is playing awfully right now. Injuries are a factor there. So again, it comes back to the availability, but also just his jumper is way off. His decision-making was really rough last game. Specifically, Nikola Jokic isn't having a good three-point shooting run where he was amazing last year. He is still dominating these basketball games. There's just a floor with him because of his multifaceted impact, because of his ability to impose himself in and around the paint that nobody else can match. Embiid, we've consistently seen the playoff letdowns. And again, the health. Giannis, unfortunately, it's becoming more about the health than anything else. I do think he's the other guy over these last 4 years who has held that best player alive throne at a point. I think that he earned that with the level that he played at in 2021. But when he's just not out there on the floor when it matters most, Jokic is creating separation there. I thought that Jason Timpf, friend of the show, made a great point when we were not recording an episode. We were just talking with him, and that there is something very peak LeBron-esque about what Jokic is doing right now. I don't think he is at the level of peak LeBron because of the two-way gap, but just the fact that the dude is always going to be available. He is always going to be healthy, which is something that is truly exceptional about both those guys historically, and that the floor is just so unbelievably high. Like, he doesn't have stinkers in the way that even a Luka does, even an Embiid does, certainly not over extended stretches of multiple games. He's averaging 28, 14, and 9 on 63% true shooting in these playoffs, having gone up against Anthony Davis and then the best defense in the league by far, and we're still like, he hasn't been his best. He could be better. His jumper's off. He should be more consistent in some spots. Like, that is beyond insane to be held to that standard. And so the efforts to discredit him, the efforts to delegitimize everything that he's done, they are and always have been stupid. And I think that the people on that side of the debate have just been exposed over and over and over again, and it's happening again right now.
God, I love your passion for Nikola Jokic, man. Dude, I love it.
You know what, dude? If you're on the train for a while, you stay on the train.
I think you're the conductor, man.
There's some good ones out there.
I think you're right, though, man. Like, Jokic breaks the mold of any typical, like, NBA superstar. Like, when you're thinking about the GOATs, you know, it's Jordan, it's LeBron, it's these hyper-athletic freaks that can, you know, get to the rim and just dominate in that way. And Jokic just, he's not athletic, he's aloof, and yet he just controls the game. That's the one thing that I would compare with him and LeBron is it's the intellectual aspect of basketball. Like, when you're talking about those two guys, they're two of the smartest basketball players ever. And I think there is an argument that Jokic controls the game offensively in a way that very few ever have. Like,
Of course.
He controls it. Dude, there was this great breakdown I saw from I think it was Hot Hand Theory or some podcast like that too, and they even broke into like some little detail where late in that Timberwolves game when they had a lead, Jokic was deliberately milking the clock on every single inbound, and it's just like little stuff like that. Like, you know, that's one of the frustrating things about Luka too, man, is his decision-making in these playoffs, right? And that's the one thing that you can be critical of Luka for. There's been a couple of games, I'd say 2 or 3 in these playoffs, where it's like uncharacteristically bad for Jokic decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
But 99% of games, I'm getting a guy who is just not going to make a bad decision all game long. He's going to generate every high-quality shot, and Yeah, I mean his standard is just ridiculous, man. His standard is ridiculous. And I want to ask you one final thing on him, dude. Like, do you think that people actively like prey on Jokic's downfall? Do you think that they like
Of
are hoping for
course.
a meltdown?
Of course, dude. And that is what happens when you're the best player alive. Like, there is fatigue, there is resentment that builds off of that. Every other fan base who wants to argue, oh, my guy's the best, when they get proven wrong, of course they are praying that they will eventually be proven right, or that they will have even a sliver of an opportunity to make that argument. Like, Logan, LeBron James is the most hated on basketball player ever. Why? Because everybody who has another guy who's their favorite, or everybody who, for whatever reason, just becomes tired of the same guy dominating, like, you start to hate that guy and you start to become irrational about it, and you dedicate your lives, some of these people, to making just terribly flawed arguments, bad faith arguments that no one could legitimately believe. We see the same stuff with Nikola Jokic. Again, people talking about path. When people were holding his lack of deep playoff runs against him, when he didn't have Jamal Murray on the floor. Like, and not just that, we're talking about pre-KCP. We're talking about without MPJ in the 2022 run. We are just talking about these rosters that without him would, like, be probably the worst basketball team in the league, legitimately. And he goes into the playoffs and he elevates his level. And that's another thing. He has consistently done that, Logan. And this is a reason that I've argued that he's the best scorer alive, because when it comes to these playoff environments, he asserts himself at a volume that you don't consistently see in the regular season. And I honestly wish that he had done that more in this specific run, but over the years, he has consistently given you 30 a night on phenomenal efficiency. Game 4, he came out looking for blood as a scorer, and nobody can stop him when he is in that mode. So that's where I don't even get the stuff about questioning his competitiveness or his love for the game or whatever. Like, I get that he is not outwardly expressive, and I get that there are specific stretches of games where you wish that he was more aggressive, but you mentioned the milking the clock thing, Logan. Like, that is gamesmanship, right? That is doing what you can to get a competitive edge. That doesn't come out of apathy. That comes out of insane competitiveness. Taking over in these big stretches like he does, like, that is what the best player on the live who wants to win desperately does. You just think about the level that he has reached in some of the most dire moments for Denver, coming back from down 3-1 against Utah, specifically in that game 7 when the score was 80-78. He gives you an efficient 30. He's the only dude on the floor in that rock fight who is consistently just getting buckets. What he did the next series against the Clippers, coming down from 3-1, being clearly the best player on the floor. Shout out Jamal. He was unbelievable in that run as well. But he just has so many special moments that people have to do all sorts of mental gymnastics to try to discredit. And that, to me, is just a testament to how great the guy is and how many people he has already proven very, very wrong. Okay, we have one more Jokic question, Logan. Tea Time asks, do you think Jokic's defense this playoff run has been amazing? I know that game 1 and 2 against the Wolves taints that a lot, but has he not been a high caliber defender overall?
Amazing's a little strong. You know, I would reserve that for elite defenders, but Jokic is an underrated defender, I would say. I think people who hate on Jokic will pigeonhole that as, you know, the crux of a big argument against him. Oh, I could never have Jokic as my best player in the world because he's not a two-way player. That's an argument that I made a couple of years ago with a bunch of players. It's flawed. I've come a long way since then. I said Steph Curry couldn't be in my top 3, and I was just wrong. You know, like, there's just an inherent value that comes when you were so great offensively that it just outweighs how much of a defensive liability you could be. Now, is he a great defender? No, but is he a good defender? Yes, I would say so. Like, the biggest thing about defense, I would harp on this for anybody who, you know, lacks athletic tools or lacks, you know, great, you know, physical traits like, you know, a long wingspan or really big vertical, or you're really strong or you're really fast. You can make up for that with engagement. Now, obviously, there are certain matchups where, you know, just engagement and effort's not going to be enough, but 90% of defense is just being engaged. And Jokic is an awesome competitor. You never have to worry about that with him on the side of the ball. And then actually on the court, like, no, he's never going to be a great rim protector because he can't really get up off the ground, but positioning-wise, I like Jokic. How he defends the post because of how strong he is. I think he matches up really well with guys. And then I really love his hands. Like, I think Jokic is always really engaged with passing lanes, with around the rim, contesting shots. I think it gets a little bit overblown and can get a little bit exacerbated on how bad of a defender Jokic is. I think that's a flawed argument. I think that Jokic is a good defender. Now, It's like the Luka thing where people will try to go out and they'll take these little clips of him being a good defender and then they'll try to stretch it out and say, oh, Jokic is a great defender. I'm not ready to go that far. Jokic is a good defender though, and I think it's a little bit overblown about how his physical traits and how much of a liability he can be.
Jokic is a fine defender. I think that Jokic defense discourse has always been generally overstated in one way or the other. There are those who have cited like just terrible metrics like defensive box plus minus. These things that are going to greatly overstate box score, defensive production, that meaning your rebounds, your steals, and blocks. Things that also heavily factor in team defense, which I just think misrepresents an individual player's defensive impact. Like, I saw somebody comment on the video I did about the T-Wolves defense saying they have 8 of the top 50 guys in defensive win shares. And listen, the Timberwolves have a lot of great defensive players. That's not the way to measure it, though, because that happens for every great defense or defensive rating. Like, these stats are correlated with your team defensive performance. There's just no way to measure defense with a single number. And I do think that Jokic has clear limitations as a rim protector. That's why I'll never be super high on his defense. Also, I thought within this specific run, he did really poorly in the Anthony Davis matchup, like was offering zero resistance there as a post defender, was not using his strength enough. He does have a positive wingspan. He has unbelievable hands, but he was just getting toasted repeatedly in single coverage and wasn't guarding the LeBron pick and roll effectively with AD as the screen defender. So I think Jokic has been fine. He's been really good these last 2 games. He's using his hands to take away passes to the roller. He's stripping defenders consistently. His greatest assets defensively are his hands and his mind. He simply knows where to be. He knows what the offense is trying to do. And so he's consistently in really good position. And then he makes plays with his instincts there. And he is consistently great on the glass, which is, of course, a very valuable thing to be when you can just consistently end possessions defensively as well as anybody on the planet. That's what Jokic does. But ultimately, like we talked about last episode, how Al Horford allowed opposing players to shoot better than average against him at the rim, which is exceptionally poor for a center. The same thing happened for Jokic this year. Like, as a pure rim protector, he just lacks the vertical ability to be a deterrent there in a way that any great defensive 5 really has to be. Like, it is pretty essential to reaching a high level on that side of the ball. But I do think that he's solid, and I do think people who look at just his athletic attributes can miss some of the really good stuff that he does do. Defensively, in the last 2 games, he's been locked in, and he has been every bit the defender that Denver needs him to be. Okay, Logan, this question comes from WDJ Flicks. What can the Wolves do to try to get Cat going on offense?
The first thing that I'm doing is I'm probably letting Cat handle the ball less after last game. The start to this game was pretty abysmal in the first half. He's just taking the rock, pounding it into the earth and trying to back guys down, just barreling into the lane. He gets some offensive fouls in that game too. I'm trying to get Cat going as a jump shooter, like getting him some easy catch and shoot looks over smaller defenders, like if it's Jamal, if it's KCP. I'm just trying to create him an easy advantage where he can shoot over the top of somebody, or getting him positioning on the low block against another smaller defender. Now, it's easier said than done because I actually like Denver's personnel in the front court. Like, I think Gordon and MPJ in the post match up physically pretty well with Cat. So it's easier said than done, but I'm just trying to get him some easy catch and shoot looks. I'm having him handle the ball less. Like, I just don't think Cat can create himself a shot. I'm doing that way less. It's tough with Cat, man. He has his moments. And, like, the other thing, too, is he just kind of consistently gets himself out of rhythm, too, when he can't stay on the floor. When he gets himself in foul trouble, too, it's just problematic when he can't be out there. But I'm having him handle the ball less. I'm getting him involved in some pick-and-roll actions where maybe I can get a smaller guy on him with Ant, with Conley. And I'm definitely just having him initiate from the perimeter less. I do not want Cat handling the ball, man. That's a negative possession. We're either going to get a turnover, we're going to get an offensive foul, or Cat's going to put up a brick. So I'm running actions for him. I'm doing more stuff off ball. I'm doing stuff on the low block. There are ways to get Cat going, and I think Cat's a good basketball player. Like, he's had great games in these playoffs so far. It's just about setting himself up for easy looks.
I think switch hunting is going to be an important way to get Cat going, because attacking Aaron Gordon straight up is just where he really struggled in this past game. I always prefer when Cat is able to attack a mismatch, starting with good deep position, post-ups as opposed to isolations where things can get more out of control. He has to handle for longer. There's more time for help to come over. Like, things can get messier when he initiates from the perimeter, but also if he's able to outright attack a mismatch, like, he generally does have success there. But Aaron Gordon physically holds up too well. Even MPJ was holding up pretty darn well last game. So you use him as a screener. They've been willing to switch. And then, like, he went 0 for 2 attacking KCP last game. I don't think that should be the case going forward. He also just has to be more ready to play make. He has to be a more willing passer when he draws help, because that's the thing. When Denver converged on him on those drives last game, it was just out of control. He was forcing up a bad shot, or he was turning the ball over. I'd like to see a little pick and roll with him and Gobert. You're never going to do that more than like 2-3 times a game, but I do think it's been extremely effective in these playoffs. Cats run 10 pick and rolls and created 15 points on those possessions. And it's just an extremely difficult action to guard because of the threat that he is as a shooter. And then he's really good at making those passes over the top of the defense to a rolling Gobert. The one time that they ran it at AG and Jokic in this series, like, it caused some confusion. They didn't cover it well, and they left Rudy off the roll. So I think that they should be switching those actions, but they didn't in that spot. So that's just a good thing to mix in to potentially create a good shot for, honestly, Rudy more likely than Cat. And then I think you're right on the nose with hunting that 3-point shot, because that is where he has been so consistently lethal in these playoffs. I think that comes down to getting him some off-screen actions where he's been very good. And also, everything is interrelated, right? So getting out and running, I think, is important for Cat's offense, because he's gotten some really good looks from deep as a transition trailer. And so then that comes down to getting stops. That's the first thing you have to do to get out in transition. It's just so essential to Minnesota's formula that they are able to defend at a higher level than they have these last 2 games, although it's really been more about just exceptional Denver offense, but they have to get more stops. And I will say, we're talking about Cat's offense here, but specifically, he has to be much better defensively. I just think that he has had some boneheaded mistakes these last 2 games. Or over the first 2 games, he was really quite good. He's always going to dangerously straddle the line in terms of foul trouble. But these last 2 games, on that possession with like a minute and a half left, he literally just didn't match up with Jokic. And so Jokic was able to get matched up with Ant, and then that's immediately a situation where Minnesota has to double. Jokic gets an easy bucket there. That's ball game. There were several instances, I thought, where he hedged too hard. Like, I think that Jamal has done a much better job of getting separation from Jaden McDaniels, from whoever is guarding him coming around screens these last 2 games. But I thought that there were positions where Cat was too willing to concede the pocket pass to Nikola Jokic, which we know is like the worst outcome for Minnesota defensively. There was a play in game 3 where he did something inexplicable, like literally just sprinted into the paint. Like, Jokic was posted up on the right block. Cat was guarding a shooter on the left wing, and it was almost like he thought he could do like a 15-foot stunt. Like, he ran towards him, but then just immediately ran back to the shooter, but way too late. Like, he had conceded a wide open look. There's just been some poor basketball IQ from him on both sides of the ball, and they need him to be a lot better, because he had been a legitimate offensive number 2. He had been legitimately engaged defensively and defending well, and that's super important to the Minnesota formula, because as we've seen last game, it doesn't matter how well Ant plays. Like, if Cat isn't pulling his weight, if Gobert is struggling offensively, if the spot-up shooters are inconsistent, you're not going to beat Denver. It's a really high bar, and Cat is a crucial part of that formula. Okay, Dylan Leach asks, who have been your guys' personal favorite players to watch this postseason?
One of my favorite players always to watch is Jalen Brunson. He's got such a great game. It's so hard to stop. Just a small guard that can do this much offensively. The throwback post game, the way he works on the low block and gets to those shots. Like, guys with good footwork, I'm just enamored with. Brunson, Jokic, guys like that. They're so much fun to watch. I'm trying to think about other guys. I always love watching Tyrese Halliburton play ball, how unselfish he is, the decision-making consistently. Like, I mean, that's the thing. I love great footwork. I love passing. And I love tough shot making, too. The one guy that I've been just blown away by has to be Anthony Edwards, too. Like, Anthony Edwards is amazing. There are just so few guys that have the athletic skill to do what he does on a nightly basis. The explosiveness, how easily he gets to the rim. And then honestly, probably just the whole collective of the New York Knicks, man. Just watching the Knicks game. I don't know how you can't love that team. It kind of sucks now without OG having to watch Precious Achiuwa, out there. It's kind of sad how depleted they are at this point, but watching how much heart that team plays with every night, I think you said this a couple shows ago, Carson, but like it really is almost out of a Disney movie, man. It feels like it's just written that way. But yeah, I really like guys that play hard, that just play, give a ton of effort and energy. I love playmaking, I love footwork, and then Anthony Edwards is just a freak. That guy, that guy is unreal. So yeah, there's a lot of guys I've liked in this postseason, but those are probably some of my favorites.
Ant is kind of an obvious number one, just playing at an unbelievable level, but also such an exciting style of basketball. We talk about how basketball fans love hyper athletes. They love downhill guards. Makes sense, dude. It's pretty thrilling, especially when you're talking about a dude like Ant, who also has the power to go through people. And then when he's putting on these shot-making displays, it's out of this world. He's 53% from mid-range, 44% from deep in these playoffs, Logan. Can't overstate how unreal that is when the guy was 35% from mid-range this regular season, 36% from three, has just like catapulted multiple stratospheres up as a jump shooter. And if this holds up, he will be the second player ever to advance past the first round, averaging 32 points per game on 67% true shooting, joining Devin Booker last year. Incredible what he's doing, and it's obviously just so fun because of the dynamic that this is a rising 22-year-old who came onto the home floor of the reigning champs and just like knocked their teeth out in the first two games of this series. Really fun. Jokic to me is always going to be on the short list. Just the basketball genius of it all. Last game, I would say legitimately one of the smartest basketball games I've ever seen anybody play. The manipulation, the use of fakes. I did a whole video breakdown of it on our YouTube channel. But also some of the stuff that he did against the Lakers, destroying Anthony Davis, particularly when he wanted to in single coverage, like down the stretch of game two when he was just barbecuing him. I also love post footwork. I love touch. I love passing. And so Jokic is the full package there. Donovan Mitchell, like when he's on, it's just such an explosive scoring ceiling. The combination of downhill pressure and volume, pull-up shooting from deep, and what he's done carrying a Cavs team that hasn't had really anything else going has been pretty inspirational. Bummer that he obviously misses game four, and I don't know that he's coming back down 3-1 in Boston without Jared Allen, but he's been really fun to watch. The footwork downhill as well, the body control, the balance, the spins, the euros, the touch, just phenomenal. And SGA is the last dude on my short list. So honestly, I would say that these have just been like maybe the four best players in these playoffs. I think Brunson has to be up there as well. He just had a really rough game, but what he did over the 6 games before that was pretty ridiculous. But SGA has had a super impressive debut in terms of being the legit superstar that he's grown into these last 2 years, averaging 38-6 on 57% true shooting with 3.2 stocks per game. And what has been so remarkable is his isolation volume, Logan. Like, that's what we saw last game, but that's what we've seen throughout this postseason. He's averaging 10.3 ISOs per game. For reference, he was a super high volume isolation player this regular season at just 6.1 per game. 10 per game is something we haven't seen since like peak James Harden in the playoffs, who sometimes was up at 15. He was just an absolute freak in that respect. But he's also gotten even more efficient on isolations compared to the regular season. He's averaging 1.13 points per ISO. That is with some tough matchups. We are talking about Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and a really strong collective group of perimeter defenders in New Orleans. We're talking about Derrick Jones Jr. in this series. PJ Washington, he's kind of giving buckets. He's just a little bit too slithery there, but he's too slithery for everybody, and he's too great as a difficult shot maker. And that is the other really beautiful thing, his utilization of the mid-range, which was the reason that OKC won in Game 4 against Dallas. He's making 3.8 shots per game from the mid-range at a 53% clip. Again, how we talk about him ramping up the isolation volume. This regular season, he was at 2.2 makes per game on 49%. So he is leaning into what he does best and doing it even better and at an even higher volume in these playoffs. And Kyrie would probably be my last shout out, just because he's always like an artistic scorer to watch. Legitimately, the ball handling, the pure jump shooting, the footwork, the balance, the creativity as a shot maker. he's one of the best and one of the most thrilling to watch that we've ever seen there. But it has been the defensive buy-in. It has been the selfless playmaking throughout the OKC series in particular, where it's like, yeah, they're trying to send two at him all the time. They're forcing the ball out of his hands, but he's making the right reads. And then in second halves, like, didn't do it last night. And that was a disappointing performance from him accordingly. But overall has been so great in those spots for Dallas. He has been really, really awesome to watch and has overall been playing at an exceptionally high level, even if the box score numbers aren't crazy. But I will say, Logan, some of the other guys, we just talked about a bunch of stars who have been really fun to watch, have been role players. And Jed Kyle asks, what are your favorite storylines from the role players in this playoff run?
Well, when we're talking about great role players, I think the first guy you got to give a shout to is the boy Josh Hart, man. And that Knicks collective, like, role players are huge, man. They are imperative to winning basketball games. Josh Hart's a superhero. What he does on the glass, now, he can get a little overzealous at points. Like, dude, watching him just barrel his shoulder and get to the rim is one of the funniest plays in basketball. Like, it's hilarious. Josh Hart is, you already know what he's doing. He's not going to stop and pop. He's not going to hit the mid-range jumper. He's not going to bust a Euro step out. He's going to just get to the hole. But his tenacious effort on the glass, man, like, consistently, it's every game. He's grabbing, I think, just under 13 boards a night here in these playoffs. It is a superhuman effort that we've gotten from him. The jump shooting stretches, too, have been important to swinging games for New York. Dante DiVincenzo and his torrential shooting nights have been amazing to watch. I'm trying to think about other big guys on teams. Oklahoma City, I want to give a shout-out to some of the guys down their rotation. One of my favorite players in the league, Kason Wallace. I loved him out of the draft last year. He is just such a winner, and that's something, Carson, that I think I'm leaning into more as we do prospect talks and stuff like that, is just guys who are ready to play winning basketball right now. I really like guys who are just ready to contribute. Now, obviously, you want to take a guy with a high ceiling, and, if you think that they are going to be a star, you'd lean towards that. But I really like Kason's ceiling, but I also just knew that he was going to be so productive immediately. He's a great defender, can guard 1 through 3, great spot-up shooter, great decision maker, and just so composed for a young guy, man. Like, it is really remarkable. Aaron Wiggins is such a great role player for Oklahoma City as well, with what he does defensively and shooting the basketball. You need these guys to win basketball games, man. It takes a complete buy-in from everybody up and down the roster, and the stars need to carry every night, but the role players also need to do all of the very little things. And so those are probably some of my I'll see if there's any more that I'm blanking on right now, but those are some of my favorites, man, right now. Kason especially.
Good choices, of course. Kason, what he did in Game 4, taking on Kyrie as a defensive assignment and really contesting him quite effectively, and then also just making 2 big threes in a game when really nobody outside of Shea could hit a shot for OKC. Shout out to Chet. He did play really well also in that game. And Wiggins has been, I would say, like, the star wing, not of course like actual star, but the rising star, a guy who has always been so productive and impressive in limited minutes this regular season, but has gotten some more shining in the playoffs, big minutes, has delivered as a cutter, as a shooter, as a defender. My 2 favorite role players, though, might both be Dallas Mavericks from this playoff run. I think that we knew when they made their trades at the deadline that immediately, like, this was going to be a different team, and we identified them as the biggest winner of the trade deadline. But PJ Washington was going to bring size. He was going to bring athleticism. He was going to bring defensive tools that he has mostly tapped into, right? 6'3" with like a 7'3" wingspan, really good vertical athlete, moves pretty well in space. But the question has always been his offensive consistency, and that's where he has just been on a ridiculous heater in these playoffs. Just for context on how well he is shooting the ball, how good he's been as an off-ball player compared to what he was this regular season, he averaged 0.79 points per spot up in the regular season. That's an awful, awful number. In the playoffs, he's averaging 1.13. That's quite good. He has gone from shooting 24% in the left corner in the regular season to 52% in the playoffs, Logan. Like, the guy just can't miss right now. He's averaging over 15 a night in the playoffs on 42%, and over the last 3 games has been Dallas's leading scorer. And he's had some really good moments defensively too. But Derrick Jones Jr. has just been so consistent particularly on the defensive end. Like, what he has done as a shot blocking wing has been sensational. If it's on ball, stuffing guys with his length, if it's what he's done as a helper. Offensively, he has attacked closeouts well. He has run the floor in transition hard. He has been a lob threat. Those two have just been vital, absolutely vital to Dallas's success, even when Luka hasn't been close to what we expect from him. Josh Hart is a no-brainer choice here. Like, just the effort plays, dude. I mean, you think about the fact that he has hit multiple big-time shots, including a game winner in this postseason run. 43% from deep is unconscious from a guy who was generally quite a poor spot-up shooter, like closer to 30% in the regular season. And all the players averaging 15, 12, and 4 in this postseason, Logan. Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, and Josh Hart. Fine company, well-deserved company. I don't even know if you can classify him as a role player, but I do have Aaron Gordon on this list. Like, he's so damn good. But I generally think, like, if you're not a star shot creator, or maybe some exceptions being like star defensive bigs, like, I say that you're playing a role. Aaron Gordon, though, plays multiple roles at an extremely high level. I think that he has been Denver's best defender throughout the postseason. KCP probably earned that title throughout the regular season, but his versatility, Aaron Gordon's, has been sensational, right? Your best option to guard LeBron, and in stretches your best option to guard Anthony Davis. Same goes for this series. Your best option guarding Cat, and in stretches your best physical counter to Ant because of his explosiveness and his strength. Like, Aaron Gordon can just physically hold up better than anybody else on this roster. And then offensively, he's having a sensational run. Like, the level that he is shooting the ball at is obviously unconscious. He's 8 of 11 from deep in his last 3 games, but that changes everything, dude. The entire Minnesota game plan is to have Rudy roam off of him. Well, it's not the entire game plan, but that is like the way to basically make Aaron Gordon ineffective offensively. Leave him in the corner, let him shoot, or he's not going to shoot, or he's going to miss. But instead, he is shooting, and he is raining those threes. But also what he did as a ball handler last game was outstanding. Hunting mismatches. Minnesota, I thought, was a bit too casual, switching Conley onto him, switching Alexander Walker onto him. Like, you need a big body on him. It has to be. Kyle Anderson was the guy who was guarding him in a lot of those bench minutes when he really took over with the second unit. But his playmaking, too, like, we know that this dude is a stud. Also, against the Lakers, what he did on the offensive glass was massive. But 15, 7, and 5, Logan, in this postseason, the consistency that we have seen from him, the efficiency, leading the postseason with a 68% true shooting, the guy has just been unbelievable. And when you consider Jamal's issues up until these last 2 games, you could argue has been their second best player over the course of this playoff run. MPJ, of course, was the second best guy in round 1, but like, then he's really cooled down in this series. Aaron Gordon has been the dude who has just consistently brought it, and he's been fantastic. I will shout out one more Timberwolf who has cooled down these last 2 games, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker, what he has done providing lineup versatility for the Timberwolves, allowing them to still thrive in non-Cat minutes, playing him and J-Mac and Ant all together, even playing those guys with Conley in that first series. Just been up there for the best perimeter defender in these playoffs, and generally has been pretty darn good offensively. But again, he has cooled down there these last 2 games, which has made him not as much of a positive, but overall just a stud who has given nightmares to some awesome offensive players. All right, Logan, we have a question from PG. Is it time for Adam Silver to get rid of conferences and go 1-16 in the playoffs? The East was, is, and always will be garbage compared to the West. By the way, it's also why I don't think LeBron reaching 8 straight finals is a big deal. He didn't beat any good teams.
I think that's actually a fair argument. I think that's an overblown stat. Like, don't get me wrong, it's very impressive, but yeah, I mean, the East was comically weak.
The East was comically weak, let's face it.
That's an interesting proposition, man. The East does suck. Like, I'm honestly not really opposed, man. Yeah, if we can get the Kings in the playoffs, I'm all for it. Let's figure out how to do it. I think we could get the Kings in the playoffs. I think we'd be a top 16 seed. The league is really imbalanced right now. Like, the West has so many good basketball teams, and then in the cellar of the East, we got the Bulls, who are probably going to be in the play-in again next year, right? Just lingering around like they always do. I'm for it. This guy's kind of talked me into it. I think that it's only going to get worse too, I think, man. I don't think it's getting any better. Like, I mean, I think it's kind of a hard sell to an NBA audience who's always been, this has been the way that they've done it forever. But, we also used to have in the playoffs where the top three seeds and, would be rewarded based on them winning their division. So things are open to change. I think with the talent imbalance in the league right now, I wouldn't be opposed. If the NBA wanted to do that, I think I would support that measure. But then we kind of get into, there's some ripple effects here, like, what's the point of even having conferences at that point? Like, does that diminish rivalries? Does that diminish, like, do we not have all-stars by conference anymore? Do we just put the, best play? I think it opens up a can of worms and kind of opens Pandora's box, so to speak, about a bunch of other effects. But I think there's an argument to be made with the talent imbalance between the two leagues that might be the best method. Like, there's a lot of teams out west that I would take they'd be way more successful out east, man.
And the thing is that you talk about the talent on the horizon, like, it is still stacked in the West. Part of this has been free agency mobility, big stars wanting to go to Western Conference teams, particularly those two in LA. But like that alone has swung the balance when you think about LeBron and Anthony Davis and Kawhi and PG and James Harden all willingly going to one city. Like they have just been landing more of the established stars the West has. Obviously, Kevin Durant going there within the past year and a half. But it is also the young crop of talent. Like you think about what the Houston Rockets have just in terms of the collective number of quality assets, and it's pretty impressive. You think about what the Memphis Grizzlies have, and it's like, yeah, in the East, we would definitely be talking about that potential future more. Obviously, the Spurs have a fellow named Victor Wembanyama, Logan, who happens to be quite good. That's on top of the fact that there were 10 46-win teams in the West this year. So there's no question that the conference is significantly better, and current indicators say that it is going to stay better. Luka Doncic is still young, 25 years old. SGA, like, there's a heavy concentration of just the best talent in basketball in the Western Conference right now. I maybe am too much of a traditionalist, and I think a lot of the changes that we've seen introduced in recent years that at first I was like, I don't know, have been a clear positive. The play-in tournament is fantastic. More high-stakes basketball with playoff implications. Incentivizes certain teams to compete more down the stretch of the regular season. Give me all that.
Let me know what you think about this. I was thinking about one. What about instead of the draft lottery, like what if we actually had a tournament to figure out who gets a number one pick? Like you got to win. Like not all the teams towards the end, like maybe just like the top four, like the four worst teams or the six worst teams or something like that.
I don't love it. I think that might be a bit excessive. And I do think that the lottery is kind of a fun NBA tradition. It's not the best, but I don't want to oversaturate like, oh, well, where can we add more games? Like the in-season tournament I think is good, but also it's like, how much are these dudes really going to care about playing for the number one pick? When are they going to do it? Like, does this happen during the playoffs when they all want to be in Cancun or whatever? I think logistically that's a bit weird. I currently would say let's preserve the conferences as they are. Maybe that is just because I really like traditional rivalries. I think that that's a really fun thing. I think it's also particularly fun when you see teams within one conference meeting multiple times over a half decade, like what we've seen with the Clippers and Mavs. Like that's fun. That builds a rivalry on top of what you already have built in within your division with the history of the sport. A lot of these rivalries span over decades and decades, and that is much more within a conference than across conferences. So I would keep it, but I can see the argument just because it's like in the 80s, the East was a much stronger conference. In the 90s, they were pretty even overall. But since 2000, the West has overwhelmingly just been way, way, way better. And that is a really extended stretch for one conference to dominate. Like normally I would say, okay, things will even out, but they haven't evened out in a while, and it doesn't look like they're going to even out soon. And it's just when you get over the years, the Magic 7 and 8 seeds and the Pistons 7 and 8 seeds with Andre Drummond and the boys, like there's definitely been some shitty teams in the East in the playoffs. To the LeBron point, it's a big deal to make 8 straight finals. But I do think that there's context that matters in all of this, right? Like 8 straight finals isn't on itself more impressive than winning 4 titles in 6 appearances or whatever. Just comparing it to what Steph and the Warriors have done, right, within that same era, because it's a lot harder to get to 6 finals out of the West than it is to get to 8 straight finals in the East. It's still incredible to get to 8 straight finals, but it was a really weak conference. Like, that is just the reality of it. And there's a reason that in several of those years, you would have looked at the biggest threat to whoever did come out of the West as being within the West. If it was the Thunder to those Spurs teams, if it was the Rockets to those Warriors teams, like there were several years where the Cavs got there, particularly it was the Cavs, but you didn't view them as the actual biggest threat to the champion. And so that's where context is important. Okay, we have another question about the East and its weakness from Amir, who asks, does any player out East truly have best in the world potential? With injuries to Embiid and Giannis to a lesser extent, it seems like the conversation will be dominated by Western Conference talent for the next decade plus, as we were sort of just discussing.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that the West definitely has the edge. Giannis and Embiid are the first guys that I point to, but like you say, I've become increasingly skeptical every year. Giannis has had multiple, injuries that have affected him playing in the postseason, as has Joel Embiid. They've been significantly hampered, and they're not getting any younger. So there's only 2 guys that I can legitimately see doing it, and they're both like long shots. Like, I think looking down the road, my picks would be SGA, would be Anthony Edwards, would be Victor Wembanyama. Those are the guys I would really bank on. So the only 2.
No Luka mention?
Luka could. It's kind of hard for me to.
Bro is out on Luka.
Luka's got potential for sure. He's on that short list up with those guys.
He's absolutely. I still think long term, give me him over SGA for sure.
Really?
I would honestly say still over Ant. Like, Luka's just having an awful run right now.
I think I'm taking Ant over almost anybody, man. I think I'm taking.
Oh, you made that clear. You said best player in the world next year.
Yeah, I think him and Wemby I would take over anybody. But the only
Wemby has to be number 1 though.
Yeah. The only 2 guys out east that I think actually have a chance are Paolo Banchero and Cade Cunningham, 2 former number 1 overall picks. And I think both of those are significant long shots. I think Cade has his scoring limitations, athletic limitations. Great playmaker for sure. I think he can be a great defender. And honestly, I think it sucks that he's in this situation in Detroit. I think it is going to make him a better player in the long run. How much of a burden he has had on his shoulders with the ball handling, having to create so much. But like, if I really had to guess where Cade ends up peak-wise, I would say it's more likely that he ends up top 20, top 15, top 10 at his apex. Paolo's the guy that I really would have confidence cracking the top 10 and then being, breaking in there. But top 5 is probably more where I would say Paolo peaks out at. I see a higher playmaking ceiling for him. I see a pretty high defensive ceiling with his physical tools. The thing that's going to unlock Paolo's game to me is him fully getting downhill more and really finishing at a high level at the rack. Like, he's a great mid-range jump shooter. I think Paolo is a legitimately great shooter. And I think the fact that he takes so many pull-up threes scales well into his scoring ceiling. And I think how, the footwork in the mid-range, the ease at which he hits these crazy difficult shots is encouraging, but I don't want him to settle, right? I want Paolo to weaponize his physicality into creating easy opportunities for his teammates more. I want him to get downhill all the way to the rim more. That's where Paolo's really going to, hit his absolute apex. But even that, I struggle to see him surpassing a guy like Ant or surpassing a guy like Wemby. I think top 10 to top 5 is more attainable. So I wouldn't predict it, but those are the only 2 guys that I would give a legitimate shot at taking that throne.
Neither of them have a legitimate shot, in my opinion, at all. I don't think that there's a dude in the next generation in the East. Like, the dude with best player in the world talent is Giannis, because I do think he has held that title. But as we talked about, Jokic has separated, in my opinion. We'll see if Giannis can get back legitimately into that conversation. Embiid, you could see a playoff run where he is the best player in the world potentially. Like, if everything is just clicking with his jump shot, he's at full health, he's dominating defensively, but I think it's a long shot because, again, the gap between him and Jokic right now is quite sizable, in my opinion. And in the West, I think there are multiple dudes with clear best player in the world potential. Wemby, Luka, Ant. I think SGA is at least on the outskirts of that conversation. To me, the highest ceilings in the East from the next generation are Hallie and Paolo. And they're on a pretty similar level to me because I think that Hallie is such an unbelievable decision maker. And when he is on as a shooter, one of the best shooters on the planet. And so he's just one of the most seamless offensive engines that we've seen in quite some time. And there is an incredibly high ceiling on team impact there. Paolo does have the athleticism. He has the shot making. He has the playmaking. But again, there's an inconsistency with those things. And as you mentioned, there is a lack of really easy offense. There's a lack of consistent high-end defensive impact. And even if he becomes more refined, which he will become more refined, it's a question of to what extent does he do so. There's not the ceiling that Wemby has. There's not the ceiling that Luka has. There's not the ceiling that Ant has. Those dudes have like one-of-one freak traits. Wemby has about 50 of them. Ant's overall combination of downhill force as a driver and the also two-way potential that his athleticism unlocks, but now what we're seeing him do as a pull-up shooter is ridiculous. But again, it is that one unstoppable downhill trait. Luka, it is the combination of just complete control of the game out of pick and roll. Guy can give you 34 a night and also be one of the top 3 playmakers on the planet. There's just a level of overwhelming dominance there that I don't think Paolo is ever going to be a consistent enough dominant downhill force. I don't think he's ever going to be like the sort of elite playmaker that we're talking about with a Luka Doncic or what have you. Cade, there's not even an argument. Like, Cade does a lot really well. He is not an elite pull-up shooter. He is not an elite playmaker. He is not even a high-end NBA athlete, and that is part of where his shot diet is difficult. I'm high on Cade, but like, we're talking about best player in the world, bro. It's only 20 dudes who have been the best player in the world in the history of the league, man. It's a special title to hold. Neither of them have it. Hallie doesn't have it. It's going to be somebody in the Western Conference, which is just crazy. But as we're talking about, that is where all of the power balance is right now. The 82-game preseason is in the books, and it's finally time for the real season. Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code NERDS only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
But Logan, the one team out east that is a big dog is the Boston Celtics. Cyclops asks, if the Celtics win the finals this year, is JT a top 5 player and JB top 10/15?
I hate this, dude. I hate this. You know what I mean? I just hate how this question is phrased. If the Celtics win the title, no, dude, it doesn't matter. If the Celtics win the title, the question should be, do they play well? That's what we're gauging these guys off of. Like, who gives a flying F? Like, if the Celtics win the chip, it's like, okay, cool. Who played well in the series? Let's gauge that. We don't have to immediately go. And oh my God, dude, I already know that's going to happen. If Boston wins a chip, all the Tatum fanboys are going to be, oh, he's the best player in the world. He's not, bro. Jayson Tatum's not. I don't care. I don't care what Tatum does in this playoff run. He's not going to do anything that's going to make me put him past Nikola Jokic. And if I'm keeping it a buck right now, I'm keeping it a Milwaukee buck, Jayson Tatum is not in my top 10 right now. He's probably like 11 or 12, or he's in that 15 to 10 range. Shout out. I also think Jaylen Brown is probably in that 15 to 10 range. I honestly think they're really close to one another. Like, there's
Interesting.
We
might have to do some would you rathers with Jaylen, because I think that's a little high.
I'm with that. He's somewhere in that 20 to 10 range for me. I really like Jaylen Brown. I think him and Tatum are really close to one another. And to be frank, as you said last episode, I think Jaylen Brown's probably been the best player for the Celtics thus far. You could also make an argument that Derek White, with what he was doing early in this, has been awesome. He's obviously tailed off the past couple of games, but he was on quite a run. It's all about how they play, and I'm cool with elevating those guys. With Tatum, man, it's the inconsistency. It is some games I get it. Some games Tatum is getting downhill all the way to the hoop. The first quarter of the last game, man, he was turning up. Some games he's draining every pull-up three. Some games he is backing guys down and getting to his post touches and knocking down easy post looks and playmaking for others. And then other games, Jayson Tatum's breaking every pull-up jumper, and he has completely disappeared. Basically, what I'm getting at with all this is that the Celtics can win the finals, but I'm going to judge these guys way more individually on their performances. And obviously, that has a key in it, right? If they win the title, I'm going to elevate these guys. But Tatum, to me, is right on the cusp of top 10, fringe top 10. He's teetering, and then JB is top 20 to top 10, and that's where they're going to land at the end of these playoffs, regardless of outcome.
Yeah, I would say almost certainly not to this question, and I think that you hit the nail on the head. Winning a title is the most important thing in basketball, as a team, of course, and I would never, ever want to devalue that. And for an individual player, if you are the best guy on that team, it is extremely important. It cements your legacy in a bunch of ways, and it generally means that you played at an extremely high level, almost always at a top 5 level. But it doesn't just by default mean that you are a top 5 guy, and the Celtics are an exceptional team in how overwhelmingly talented they are with a healthy Kristaps Porzingis, how legitimately great that starting 5 is. Like, we're talking about 5 top 50 to 60 players in the NBA. I would say 3 top 40-something players, 3 legitimate all-star caliber players. So it's just a hell of a basketball team, and Tatum individually hasn't been playing close to a top 5 level in this playoff run and wasn't close to a top 5 level this regular season. I believe I had him at number 9 on my player rankings, and that feels like a good spot for him. Like, Tatum is a really, really great basketball player, and I do think, although Brown has been probably better throughout this run, like, there's a clear gap between them because of what Jayson does on the glass, because of what he does as a considerably better playmaker, because of what he does as a more impactful all-around defender, and normally he is their best scorer. He just hasn't been in this run. And Jaylen is balling out right now, but like, even at this level, I would say he's playing at a top 20-ish sort of level. Like, there is no world in which Jaylen Brown is a top 10 player after this run. There's no world in which he surpasses Anthony Davis or LeBron or Tatum himself, like whoever you have to leapfrog to get into that conversation, even Kevin Durant, Devin Booker. Like, I view the Donovan Mitchells, the Jalen Brunsons in a different tier. I think they are more dynamic offensive creators equipped to carry a much heavier load because Jalen still isn't a good playmaker, because he isn't normally a very high efficiency scorer. Like, I love the guy. He's a Cal Bear, but he's not going to be top 10, 15. And Tatum, I just view other players more highly. I think that there are dudes who are better equipped to completely dominate basketball games than Jayson Tatum. There are dudes who are more overwhelmingly great scorers, who are more consistent playmakers, who are just in different tiers as playmakers. And those are the sort of guys who we're looking at in the top 5. Tatum would be the one who like doesn't have that single A++ trait. Everybody else has that, and Tatum doesn't. So even if they win, I don't think it would move Tatum into the top 5, but it's like you say, it depends on how the guys play. If Jayson Tatum is absolutely dominant, if he is the best player on the floor against Nikola Jokic in the Denver Nuggets, then yeah, obviously that's an incredible accomplishment. But if I were to guess, does that have to happen for Boston to win the title? Probably not. And even if Tatum plays at like a top 5 level for a series, that's incredible. It doesn't just automatically make him a top 5 player. Okay. We have a question from Titus. What is your favorite NBA playoff series that you watched, one live, and one that you had to go back and watch?
It's a great question. I think the 2 series that pop out in my mind, man, I'm trying to figure out if this should be number 1 or not. I think my favorite is, and I hated the outcome because I was rooting for the Spurs, probably 2015 Clippers Spurs in the first round. Just an absolute slugfest, man. Like, it goes 7 games. These teams were so evenly matched. I loved the Spurs when I was a kid. I loved the ball movement. I loved Tim Duncan, Tony, Manu. Like, I just, I didn't subscribe to a team. I wasn't a fan of any specific team yet, but I just loved watching the Spurs play. So that one hurt my heart a little bit watching it live, but that Chris Paul buzzer beater was so sick. The way it kissed off the glass, it did not look like a good shot. That is a core memory for me as a basketball fan. I think that was the same night, I want to say, as I think it was the Pacquiao Mayweather fight, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right.
I remember that night distinctly, just like it was a crazy sports night. But the Chris Paul buzzer beater, that is a moment I will never forget as a basketball fan. And then the other series I think about is 2011 Mavericks Heat. Like, that is such a classic basketball series. LeBron, the big 3 Heatles going up against a great team full of veterans. I love that Mavericks team. And Man, it was just an awesome series. Like everybody expected. And it's not just like LeBron collapsed. Like that was a part of it. I wish LeBron had played better in that series. I think it would have been better. But the fact that the Mavericks and the whole team collective was able to overcome, like they just seemed so overmatched. It seemed like a foregone conclusion that Miami was going to take that one home, and Dallas knocked them off. Those are the first two that come to mind when I think about classic, awesome playoff series in my lifetime.
So I'll shout out some great first round series. First of all, I think Knicks Sixers this year is already up there, just like the stakes of it because of the fan bases, but the absolutely ludicrous endings through just about every game, the outstanding individual performances from Hart, from Maxey, from Embiid, from Brunson. Everybody had their moment. Really awesome series. We mentioned this one earlier, but I think that 2020 Nuggets Jazz in the bubble was a pretty exceptional 7-game series. You just had like these absolute explosions. Donovan Mitchell gives you 50. Jamal gives you 50. Actually, Donovan Mitchell gives you 50 twice in that series. And then you have a real dramatic tone change in game 7 where it had been like this super offensively oriented series, and all of a sudden it's just a rock fight. I also think the Mavs Clippers first round series in 2020 and 2021 were awesome. And you mentioned Spurs Clippers. That was a great series. I would go 2014 Warriors Clippers as well, even as a Warriors fan who was bummed that they lost. That was an awesome basketball series, and there was a bunch of animosity there, which is always great for the playoffs. I would say, though, probably the two best playoff series of our lifetimes are NBA Finals, and it's 2016 and it's 2013. Like, just absolutely incredible, iconic 7-game. And the final 2 games of Spurs Heat was just outstanding. The tension, the level of play was so consistently high. And then obviously the last 3 games really of Cavs Warriors. I mean, that was an awesome series throughout, but then game 7 is just one of the best basketball games that I've ever seen. And again, sometimes it's the lack of offense that creates the really awesome dramatic tension in these moments when every bucket means that much. When Kyrie puts you up 92-89 and like nobody scored in 4 minutes, that's just a special moment. Historically, I'll shout out a couple finals as well. The 84 finals, super iconic for a number of reasons. Ironically, a lot of it being Magic choking, which I feel like nobody ever really talks about. It gets iconic, but it's not like Magic ever gets slandered for the 84 finals because he's done so much other great stuff in his career. But I think we can apply that to other players, Logan. I think there's something to learn, that people are not defined by their worst moment. Dribbles out the clock in game 2, literally a J.R. Smith moment, thought that they were up and they weren't, or didn't have an awareness of the clock. And then game 4, bad pass. Robert Parrish picks it off, misses 2 free throws in overtime. Game 5 of that series is also the iconic game where it's like 100 degrees in the Boston Garden. And that's what people always talked about, like opposing fans, how the locker room sucked there, how they didn't have air conditioning, and it was just like a miserable place to play. But pretty insane in a finals matchup between Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and the Celtics and the Lakers. And then I'll shout out another Lakers finals from the 80s. The 88 finals against the Pistons, which also went 7. IT scores 25 in the third quarter, still a finals record on a really bad ankle. It's just one of the most incredible individual performances that I've seen. And then you have Big Game James earning his nickname in game 7. I think it was a 36-point triple-double. Just a ridiculous performance.
The other ones that I'd shout out in recent memory too, Celtics Heat from a couple of years ago where what was that? Man, I'm trying to remember. The Derek White putback, you know.
Oh, that's not what I thought you were talking about. I thought you were talking about 2012.
No. The one in recent memory, you know, Jimmy bosses up, has the 50-piece. That series was nuts. I'm trying to think, like, early 2000s. I'm trying to think if there's any series that I'm spacing out on. I'm thinking of a lot of first rounders. The Bulls Celtics one where Ben Gordon goes for like 40. That's one that sticks out in my mind because it's so weird. Yeah, a lot of first rounders. I think you hit the key though. I think the 2 ones at the top have to be 2016 and 2013. I think those are concretely 1 and 2 for me.
Peak basketball, dude. Speaking of peak basketball, Logan, let's go to the exact opposite of that. Alex asks, as an Australian, I'm left wondering, what's left for Josh Giddey? Thought he played well in the Pelican series. Is there any team that would want this type of player?
What is left for Josh Giddey? That's a good question, man. Carson and I have talked about this extensively. Carson actually made a video on why Josh Giddey stinks and is a bad basketball player earlier this year. You should go and check it out. He might be working on another one right now. I don't want to put content in his mouth, but he's
I'm
not.
not.
Well,
but I pondered
Giddey's,
it.
Yeah, Josh Giddey stinks. We've reached that conclusion, and it's not like Josh Giddey does good things on the basketball court, but he's a primary ball handler who can't really score, and so he's just limited in terms of advantage creation, and that's an archetype that's a red flag for me as as someone doing scouting or looking at a prospect. Like Carson loved Josh Giddey in the draft process when he was projected to be a second round pick or a late first round pick. Carson goes, this would be a great value guy to get at pick 20 or pick, late in the first round. And then he goes 6th overall. And that's just a drastic overreach. And a guy that I kind of have reservations about in this draft class that's in a similar archetype is Nikola Topic. And I think Topic is better. I think that there's a few things that he does better, but he's a primary ball handler who can't really score all that well. And so I'm just left wondering, why would I put the ball in this guy's hands? The defense isn't going to respect him. He's not going to be able to create an advantage. He's not athletic enough to really get downhill and collapse the defense. And so when he doesn't have the ball in his hands, you're left with a guy, this is Giddey, of course, you're left with a guy who can't really shoot all that well, who's inconsistent as a jump shooter. You've got a guy who's not crazy athletic, can't attack closeouts at a high level, a guy who doesn't defend at a high level. Sure, he's a great passer, and if you want to let him run your second unit, that's probably the role that he is best equipped to do. But I don't really think Giddey's a starting caliber player in the NBA, and he's not a guy that I believe in enough as a playmaker and as a conductor to put the ball in his hands for, every possession of every game. I just don't think he's that kind of engine. So he's young. He's a good passer. He's got an okay handle. To me, he's just too limited as a scorer to ever really be a star. And it's everything. He doesn't have a three-point shot. He doesn't finish exceptionally well at the rim. He doesn't create high-level shots at the rim. His floater touch is average at best. I just think he's a flawed basketball player, and I think his role in this league is probably as a second-unit point guard, a guy that runs my bench unit for 15 to 20 minutes a night. No, I don't really think that there's a higher ceiling or a flip that's going to switch here. I just think this is who he is as a basketball player, and I think that particularly in Oklahoma City, with all the shooting, scoring, ball handling, and defense that they have, I don't really think Oklahoma City needs him.
I agree. I think that he is going to be somewhere else quite soon. Maybe you can sell somebody else on the vision. I personally wouldn't be compelled by it, but I think you're right. I think he's best served as a bench creator where maybe he can deal with some defensive liabilities, and he's a capable driver. And once he gets into the lane, he's a really good passer, but the problem is just he struggles to get a step on legit NBA athletes. And then, as you mentioned, the floater touch is solid but inconsistent. The finishing at the rim is brutal. He's just often sort of overwhelmed by these superior athletes. And the biggest problem is when you are playing him off ball and you just don't have to guard the guy, you can just leave him wide open in the corner and he's going to miss. Giddey played well down the stretch of this regular season. He shot really well in that Pelican series. I don't want to frame this as this dude is a basketball player without any sort of redeeming traits who is always awful. It's not that. But it has been very clear in this specific matchup that there are just so many wings who can punish Dallas so much more for roaming off of them because they're just much better shooters and they're better athletes, they're better defenders, they're more capable of attacking closeouts. This really is a nightmare matchup for Giddey, and this is the worst case scenario for him. But overall, I am not high on his prospects. I do think it's pretty simple. It's when you are a labored scorer, a poor NBA athlete, a poor shooter, and you struggle to defend, doesn't really matter how good you are as a passer. It doesn't really matter how well you push in transition. You're never going to be a building block. He's always going to be a super inefficient scorer who defenses will quite easily expose his weaknesses offensively. So I like him as a bench creator somewhere. Okay, Dunks and Hoops asks, who do you think the Spurs should select at 4 and 8? Ideally, I'd like Ron Holland to build a defensive first mentality.
I love the Ron Holland pick. I think Ron Holland is going to be a stud. I think he is an impact winning player immediately. I think if San Antonio has the opportunity to take him there, I would take Buzelis or Ron Holland. And Buzelis reminds me a little bit of Franz Wagner, just in terms of how they play, like slinky, like wings, can handle a little bit, can play make, can shoot from behind the arc, but not crazy athletes. And that's why I prefer Ron Holland, I think, marginally to Buzelis. I like his athletic traits a little more. Holland's got a sneaky good handle, and he's a sneaky good playmaker. The numbers aren't going to reflect it, like in terms of assist to turnover ratio and numbers like that. I think it's because he's playing on G League Ignite, and guys just don't hit shots. Like Ron Holland creates good shots for his teammates, and that's why I like Ron a lot. Is I think he does have a high ceiling, but I think that he is immediately going to be an impact winning good role player. Like I think he's a winner. So at 4, I would take Ron Holland if he was available. The other guy that I look at for the Spurs at 8, 4 guys. I'm between 4 guys, Carson. You kind of tell me. I did not come out right. That sounded very strange. Pause. I think they could go center if Klingon or Edey is available, and you have this weird Twin Towers-ass lineup where you're just insane on the interior with Edey or Klingon, and I think you have an absurd defensive ceiling there. I don't know if that's best for long term because you lose a little bit of that Wemby spacing the floor, but that's a route they could go that intrigues me a little bit. I think they could take an NBA-ready player like Dalton Connect, who just makes winning plays, and I think that the Spurs just desperately need guys who can hit shots, who you can run actions for. Connect's going to make good decisions. He's going to hit open shots. He's going to run off of DHOs, off pin downs. Like, there's just easy actions that you can run for him. And I think he's a winning role player immediately. Doesn't have the highest ceiling, but I think is a winning player. And then the last guy I look at, if the Spurs don't flip these picks for a Trae Young or for another guard, I would take Isaiah Collier. I think Collier is going to be a stud in this league, man. I think he is going to be an awesome point guard. I love the physicality that he plays with, how strong he is as a downhill driver. Like, he's strong, and he's really athletic. And I think that alongside a guy like Wemby, he's a guy that moves it for me. He's also a pretty good tough shot maker, like off the dribble. He's not a great shooter, but he's really strong. The Spurs have a lot of flexibility in this class, man. So those are all the prospects that I'm really high on and that I think the Spurs should look into. I'm staying away from Topic. I'm staying away from Rissache. I think it's how good Wemby is right now. You take guys that can play winning basketball immediately and help him win games. And I like all those guys as options for the Spurs.
I don't get the discourse about the Spurs drafting a center. Like, we saw Wemby hold down the defensive 5 and produce a really good team defense when he was on the floor as a rookie with poor defenders all around him. Like, he's just a freak, guys. Like, I get it. He doesn't look super strong, but it just doesn't matter when you have an 8-foot wingspan and you're 7'4". I just think...
You don't think that works, or what?
I would just rather have the spacing that comes with Wemby being involved as like my screener whenever I want, with just him having clean lanes to roll into where I can throw the ball up anywhere and he can just murder you. I mean, I think defensively, pairing him with a Klingon would be incredible. I don't think Klingon is going to be there at 8 with how things are trending, but I really like Klingon. I just don't think it is necessary, especially not long-term. Like, Logan, we already saw it. Like, that was the vision, right? Zach Collins is going to be our mature defensive 5. And what happened? Wemby played way better once he was the starting 5. Way better. And of course, part of that is just natural progression, but it happened pretty immediately. There was an initial leap once he became the starting 5. My ideal outcome right now, and this draft is interesting. It's a little bit 2013-esque in that, like, you don't know where exactly dudes are going to go, right? Anthony Bennett was like not even mocked really in the top 5 in many places. And then he went number 1. This year, I think, is different because I think Sarr is emerging as a clear number 1. But I think there's a wide range that a lot of these guys could fall into. But if these dudes are on the board, I would like Reed Shepherd at 4. I think that he just has such a high floor. I think you're getting an elite shooter. I think you're getting a high-end point of attack defender, really good decision maker. I wouldn't be taking a swing on like the star guard creator in this class if I'm San Antonio, because I don't think that that guy is there. I don't think it's Rob Dillingham. Like, I think that he is the rare guy who has that upside offensively, but I'm not super confident in it. Like, I think it's quite likely he just becomes a really exciting scoring 6th man. I don't think that he is up to the caliber of the general star guard prospects who we see in these classes. So I would just be trying to add stud high floor dudes, and then you build your assets, you wait, And maybe it's you trade for Trey this offseason. Maybe it's you trade for another star guard down the line. But I just wouldn't want to swing and miss. So I'd take dudes who I'm confident in. Reed Shepherd is one. And at 8, Logan, I know you love this guy. You probably don't think he'll be there if you were the GM. But I think there's a real chance that he is. And that's Cody Williams, Jalen's brother, who I just think is like a guy who brings a lot of positive wing traits to the table. The length, the athleticism, a bit of ball handling, solid driver, a bit of shooting. Just a dude who I'm pretty confident in being another high floor two-way contributor. So that's the type of players who I would be targeting at 4 and 8 for the Spurs. It's a different kind of draft. You're not generally going to take a bunch of big swings because I agree with you. Like, I'm not out on Topic, but I do think it's concerning when you're talking about him as like a top 3 guy, and he does have the red flag of, I wouldn't say he's not a good scorer. He's definitely been a good international scorer because he's a shifty driver. He's definitely a more effective driver than Giddey, but he's shown no floater game, and he's really struggled as a shooter from beyond the arc. Like, if you're drafting him top 3, the goal is he's going to be an offensive star because he's not bringing the floor in terms of impact in other ways that some of these other dudes are. So I would go with the high floor guys. Okay. Frankie asks, which star do you think is most likely to be traded this summer? And we got a few questions about star trades, so sort of combining them into one here.
I'd say Trae Young. I mean, it sounds like everything organizationally is screaming that, the players don't like playing with him. He's kind of hard to coach. His defensive effort and engagement and what he lacks there. It just seems like Trae's the guy that's going to be moved. You wonder about Donovan Mitchell as well in Cleveland, just when enough is enough here. Like, he has been putting on superhuman performance after superhuman performance. If I'm Cleveland, I'm not giving up on Donovan Mitchell. Like, he's my guy. I'm going to move Garland and Allen way before I move off of Donovan Mitchell. But again, that may not be a decision for Cleveland. Donovan may force their hand. So Donovan Mitchell and Trae Young are probably the first 2 guys that I think of. I've also heard a lot of rumors Jimmy Butler could be moved, is what I'm hearing about, maybe Pat Riley's fed up with him. He's getting older. Miami's always ahead of the curve. I've heard potentially Paul George as well, maybe getting moved off of the Clippers. Like, it's tough, man. I want to go on record too, man. I love Paul George and I love Jimmy Butler as much as the next guy. I'm not giving up a lot of capital to get those guys. They're older wings. They're not getting any better. Like, look, man, I put Jimmy in my top 10 players for the playoffs, but he's also been really banged up consistently in the regular season, and he's been banged up in the playoffs, and I just don't know how much that guy's going to touch the floor anymore. So I would probably, out of those guys, I'd give the most up to get Donovan Mitchell and then Trae, but that's my list. I would say Mitchell, Trae, Paul George, and Jimmy Butler are probably the most likely candidates to get moved this offseason.
So PG's a free agent who I do think very possibly could be on another team. And we've talked about some of the candidates. The Sixers are going to have a lot of cap. I think that would be awesome. I don't think this makes sense timeline-wise, but I do think basketball fit-wise, Orlando is just not that far from being able to sign him outright, probably. I mean, it would probably still have to be a sign and trade. They'd have to move a couple mid-sized contracts. But, basketball fit-wise, I think that would be awesome. But again, he's 32 years old. I don't think that they're going to prioritize moving assets, dedicating cap to him. I probably would say Donovan Mitchell, and I don't think the Cavs are going to be the ones who want to do that. I just think it's more likely that he is done. I mean, this is like as depressing a playoff run for the guy as you could have, where you do everything and you're still not even remotely close. You talk about Miami moving Jimmy. I would like to see them actually go the opposite direction and try to go all in instead of just saying, hey, can we win with less talented players every year? Like, what if we got Donovan Mitchell? And now they have assets to where if you put together that 24 first, 29 first, 31 first, Hawkes and Hero, like, I think that's a pretty good haul for Cleveland. And at the same time, it's not like devastating to Miami. I think that would be a win for them. Just having a top 20 dude who can put you over the top, be your best offensive player in a run, like, that immediately eliminates the need for a hero. And Hawkes is a solid young wing. I like him, but like, let's not act like he's irreplaceable here. I think that'd be a win for them. The other guy who I look at, who this is more from the team's perspective, wanting to move off of him, is Brandon Ingram. Because as we've talked about, the Pelicans roster, there's just redundancies with the 2 difficult shot makers. the limitations that puts on you with both BI and CJ not being able to play your awesome athletic 3-and-D wings alongside Zion. It's just not a good fit for your big three. I don't know that there's going to be a super hot market for BI, though. Like I mentioned Orlando the other minute, BI would make more sense timeline-wise, adding another shot creator, but that's clunky to me. That's clunky because now you have 3 big wings, none of whom are volume 3-point shooters, 2 of whom are like particularly tough mid-range shot makers. I just don't think that works. And then I don't really know, like, where are the teams dying to get Brandon Ingram? I do think that to some extent he is a strange fit in any spot, and he's not a guy who I would really want to be like my number 2 at this stage. So I don't know that there's a hot market for him, but teams often will get a little bit hungry for those star creators wherever they can find them, and if he's on the market, you'll get something back. So those are the few guys who I would identify. All right, Logan, one more question here. Then we have a couple of non-basketball questions that you guys asked. King asks, what does Bam have to do to win Defensive Player of the Year?
Jimmy Butler's got to be healthy in the regular season. I mean, actually, no, never mind. Let me change my answer real quick. That's what I would have said probably for the past 3 years. There's nothing. I mean, Wemby's going to win that thing every year for the next decade, dude. So I'm sorry. Like, Bam's probably just going to be one of these great overlooked defensive big men who were like the best on the planet. Like, there's a lot of guys in the 90s that get lost in the shuffle, like, you know, Alonzo Mourning. You always talk about your boy in the early 2000s.
Well, Alonzo Mourning has deep boys. Patrick Ewing doesn't, though, who's like one of the greatest defensive bigs ever.
I think when people think about great defensive bigs, you know, they immediately go to Hakeem, you know, David Robinson, guys like that. And there was just so many in the 90s that they can kind of get lost upon people. You know, you talked about your boy, Theo Ratliff, Marcus Camby. I think Bam, with what he does switching and how he can guard 1 through 5, he's the best isolation defender in basketball, has been for, I think, 4 or 5 years running now. Like, Bam's one of the best defenders on planet Earth, but he's, one, never going to put up the counting numbers to really make an argument over a guy like Wemby or Gobert. You know, he hovers normally around a steal and a block, or a steal and 1.5 steals and blocks per game. Like, that's just where he hovers around. And then with Jimmy consistently being out, like, Miami just doesn't ever have the team defense in the regular season for you to make a convincing argument. Like, when we were looking at individual impact, yes, I think Bam Adebayo is one of the 5 best defenders on planet Earth. It's like Wemby, AD, Gobert, Bam. Like, that's probably my list. And I'm very high on Bam, but yeah, I just don't think there's ever going to be a convincing enough statistical argument. And then Wemby's just going to put up these ridiculous stocks numbers every single year. And I expect the Spurs to be one of the best defenses in the NBA once they put a competent basketball team around him. So, yeah, I don't think Bam's ever going to get one, man. I think he's going to be one of those guys where you go, like Anthony Davis or Tim Duncan. It's like, man, how the hell did this guy, like, never get a depoy?
I agree. And to me, the clearest reason is what you mentioned with the defensive playmaking numbers. Like, I think that this is changing a bit, but it's not really changing. There has always been a premium placed on big time shot blocking numbers above all else. Like, you think about some of the greatest defenders that we have seen in the history of this league, and they don't have Defensive Player of the Year awards. Oftentimes it is dudes who hang their hat on exceptional versatility. You think about a Scottie Pippen. Generally, it's just been hard for wings to win. But again, he was never going to have like the gaudy numbers. But it was undeniable that he's one of the 10 best defensive players that we've ever seen. Kevin Garnett only gets 1. Kevin Garnett is without a question the best defender of the 2000s. All the love in the world to Ben Wallace. Dwight Howard is amazing, but it's because those dudes were blocking 3 shots a game, and KG was blocking 1.5 shots a game. Now, he was, to me, more valuable because of his insane versatility, also his rebounding dominance, although Ben Wallace was equally dominant on the glass. But it's just a trend throughout history that if you don't put up big shot blocking numbers, you're probably not going to win the award as a big specifically. And it's really hard to win the award as anything other than a big because there's a premium on rim protection, as there should be. It's the most valuable thing you can do defensively, but Bam does offset the fact that he's not an elite rim protector. He's still a good one, with the fact that he is the most switchable big that we have seen in this league. Like him and KG, I would say, are the top two, just absolute freaks with their ability to guard in space. So I don't really see the path. Also, you generally have to be on a dominant regular season defense, and the Heat are consistently very good. They're never posting like a top 3 defense. They're normally in that like 7 to 10 range, and it's tough to overcome that. So unfortunately, I don't really see the path for Bam. And he's also a guy whose value is always going to become even more significant in the playoffs because of his ability to shut down an offense switching 1 through 5. Like, I just feel like the microscope on that, once you are legitimately schematically focusing on, okay, how can we make the opposing team as uncomfortable, that just becomes more appreciated in the playoffs. So definitely going to go down as one of the best defenders, probably not to win one. All right, we have 2 non-basketball questions that we'll get to real quick, Logan, because the people want to know. Daniel asks, who is your favorite of the so-called bad emperors in Rome, Logan?
Yeah, I tend to like good emperors.
L, answer the question.
I don't know. I heard Caligula and Nero
He's a sick bastard. Oh, those are both sick bastards.
Yeah, I heard they were both douches. So I'll go with those guys. I don't bang with bad emperors. I like the good emperors. Shout out Marcus Aurelius, bruh. Shout out the stoic lifestyle. I rock with him. I don't rock with the bad emperors.
Caligula was Nero's uncle, Logan, as you may well know. And he did some very terrible things to him, if I'm not mistaken. Caligula was just a raging pedophile. So, tough to say that he's my favorite. He might be the worst. What's interesting, I went through a phase where I was watching Roman Emperor content, like these sort of 20-something minute YouTube biographies on them. And it's hilarious how, like, almost always the people are hyped when the new emperor takes over, because they were like, that last guy sucked. He can't be worse than the last guy. And then they start torturing and murdering the masses, and they start viewing themselves as gods and just think that they're immortal. And then you get to the next guy and you're like, well, surely Nero can't be as bad as his uncle Caligula. And then he is. But yeah, those are the big 2, I feel like. Who else was bad? I can't really remember who else was particularly bad. Giant Enjoyer asks, basketball, 1v1, Logan versus Carson. Who do you have in final score?
Fortunately, we've ran this simulation many times. I would probably say Carson and I have 1v1, I don't know, 20 to 30 times, I'd guess.
Probably more, I feel like.
Maybe more. We used to run a lot back in the day. I beat Carson once. It was off hella BS. I was hitting tons of BS fadeaway jumpers in the mid-range. I was hitting every post hook I took from everywhere on the court. Like, you got to think about this, man. Carson, you're what, 6'3" with a, what's your wingspan, man? 6'7"?
Yeah, 6'7" plus.
Yes, he's got a plus wingspan. I'm 6 foot flat with a 6 foot flat wingspan. I am not explosive or athletic in any way. Like, I'm a good, like, spot-up shooter. I can play in a 5-on-5 context. I am not made for 1v1. I just have to get super hot from behind the arc. So, thinking rationally here, unless I don't hit a bunch of pull-up BS threes, which I can normally hit against most people, I can't against Carson because he can just play drop on me, but his arms are long enough where he can stuff most of these shots. So I'm very confident in this answer. Give me Carson 11-3.
I'm just bigger. That's all it comes down to. I'm also not built to play one-on-one at all. My one-on-one game is ugly, but yeah, I'll just back you down. And then
it's effective.
It's a little touch with the hooks and floaters. Yeah, we have run it before. It tends to go my way, but not on the back of skill, just on the back of size, really.
It's basically Campaign versus Isaiah Hartenstein.
Yeah, pretty apt comparison. So if you guys want tickets to that, then you know where to find it. Whenever we're playing one-on-one, I guess we'll stream it, and we'll make you guys pay. It'll actually be on our OnlyFans. All right, appreciate you guys, as always. Hope you enjoyed this one. We will be back tonight reacting to the games. Timberwolves Nuggets, Game 5, big one, folks. So stay dialed into that. Pacers Knicks, of course, as well. If you want more Nerd Sesh content, it's all across our YouTube channel. As I mentioned, I did a video breakdown of the Nuggets offense in Game 4. You can find that. You can find all of our full shows from throughout this postseason, which you can also listen to across audio platforms. You can follow us across social, TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can join our Discord if you want, and you can check out our merch at thevolume.com. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Braver.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.